Hello, folks. Now, many times I've discussed how important it is that if you are summoned to a court, that your first response would have to be um, you want a copy of the case management files. Okay, that's got all the data. It should have the invoice for the court fee included in the file. And everything else and anything else, testimonies, etc., that are involved in this matter. But more importantly, your second response would be immediately to request a court of record. Okay, now the reason why it's so important that this court of record is in play, it's because if you are in a star chamber that is not a court of record, then you are not in a king's court. You're not in an English court. You're in something other, a corporate admiralty nonsense court. And of course, we've discussed that that's, you're brought into that on person, okay? But even so, as a citizen of the realm, you are still on person, not with the surname as we're on now, but still you're operating in person, which is what English common law is based on entirely. Biblical law is different. That's based on man and is distinct from person. But English common law, which is case law, court of record, because if there was no court of record, there would be no case law. There would be no English common law whatsoever. Can you understand the importance of grasping why you require a court of record? Because it's distinct then from the star chambers, okay? And they can't just go ahead with your consent and basically just fleece you on person because you've not understood the reality of what's actually going on. And this is for council tax. Why it's important that you need a court of record, okay? And we have to refer then to Sir William Blackstone and his commentaries on law, English law. And this is Article 3, Section 1. Now, I'm not going to read it all. There's a first paragraph that we don't necessarily need to look at. I will put it under this link so you can read it yourself. But just to grasp how important it is and why you have to insist on a court of record, I'm going to offer this to support that. Okay, so it says, a court is defined to be a place wherein justice is judicially administered, and as by our excellent constitution, the sole executive power of the laws is vested in the person of the king. So it is presenting the importance of the English constitution there, okay? Because all power is vested in the king, the monarch, the office of monarch, okay? Which is subject to the constitution. The sovereignty gained is thus gained through the consent of the citizens, the population, okay? So we are not separate and distinct from the crown as a citizen. We are the crown. We are the crown, and we offer sovereignty to the office and thus the holder of that office to administer the constitution on all offices beneath it. Okay, it's important that we get that. So I'm going to repeat that. It says, a court is defined to be the place where injustice is judicially administered, and as by our excellent constitution, the sole executive power of the laws is vested in the person of the king. It will follow that all courts of justice, which are the medium by which he administers the laws, are derived from the power of the crown. For whether created by act of parliament, letters patent, or prescription, in brackets, the only methods of erecting a new court of judicature, the king's consent in the two former is expressly, and in the latter implicitly given. In all these courts, the king is supposed in contemplation of law to be always present. So a judge is basically, through his oath, representing the king in whatever matter is before that court. Okay? And this, of course, is English common law. So this is we're dealing with specifically courts of record, not the star chambers, which are distinct and unlawful according to common law, according to the coronation oath, which obliges the monarch to abide by that ruling, and also through the Bill of Rights. Okay. So in all courts, the king is supposed in contemplation of law to be always present. But as that is in fact impossible, he is there represented by his judges. Okay, so you see the judge is looking at the king. Okay, so he is there represented by his judges, whose power is only an emanation of the royal prerogative. Okay, so their powers are fixed entirely into English common law. And they are not to go beyond that scope. If they are, they're not judges, they're not acting for the king, you're not in a court of justice, you're in a star chamber. For the more speedily universal and impartial administration of justice between subject and subject, the law hath appointed a prodigious variety of courts, some with a more limited, others with a more extensive jurisdiction, some constituted to inquire only, others to hear and determine, some to determine in the first instance, others upon appeal, and by way of review. All these in their turns will be taken notice of in their respective places, and I shall therefore here only mention one distinction that runs throughout them all, that some of them are courts of record, others are not of record. A court of record is that where the acts and judicial proceedings are enrolled in parchment for a perpetual memorial and testimony. So that's your court of record. Yeah, which then is your case law, the body of law, which rolls are called the records of the court, and are of such high and supereminent authority that their truth is not to be called into question. So the body of law, known as the rolls, are called the records of court and are never to be brought into question. So if you're in court and you're using those laws, you're in the correct jurisdiction, nothing else can question that. It's classed as fact. Okay? And again, called to the bar, the hindrance, they aren't allowed to deal in facts. So that you know straight away they're not actually dealing in law, because they're not dealing in facts, which can never be called into question as case law. Okay. For it is a settled rule and maxim that nothing shall be averred against a record, nor shall any plea or even proof be admitted to the contrary. So that's all your garbage stuff. You cannot be brought in and presented as to be able to stand against what is English common law. And if the existence of a record be denied, it shall be tried by nothing but itself. That is, upon bare inspection, whether there are any such record or no. Else there would be no end of disputes. Okay? But if there appear any mistake of the clerk in making up such record, okay, so this is where you're looking at, in a lot of cases, it's the clerk of the court who is plain clever, and thus the first point of call in holding to account, if you were. But if there appear any mistake of the clerk in making up such record, the court will direct him to amend it. So if a court case has come across, brought about by the clerk or allowed by the clerk, and the court starts, and you bring this to the attention of the judge then has the power to instruct the clerk that he has to amend his mistake, which is where, if you're in a court and it's going on a bit shenanigans, you can stand and say, objection, I believe there's been a mistake. That should then prompt the judge, because it gets him off, and we can move it against the clerk. Okay, so these clerks are important in relation to responsibility and then accountability. If you believe you're not getting justice, the king's justice, in any court hearing that you have been summoned to. Now, this is the important bit, okay? And this is why it's so important that it has to be a court of record, okay? It says, all courts of record are the king's courts, in right of his crown and royal dignity. So that's all the laws that fix the office of monarch, yeah, ordained by the people and held within the constitution, okay? And therefore, no other court hath authority to fine or imprison. Now, do you understand the immensity of that final sentences in relation to how important the court of record is? I'll say it again. All courts of record are the king's courts, in right of his crown and royal dignity. So then you know you're under English law. And therefore, no other court had authority to fine or imprison. So in effect, these Stoic courts don't have that right or authority. However, the fact that you're going in on surname, on person, you've consented. You've made contract with them. You're with me? So in essence, they're not breaching common law because you're not in a court of common law. The judges in most cases are not judges, they're retired barristers, they're retired magistrates perhaps. Not so much retired judges, because judges are held to their oath until their death. That it doesn't end even when they retire. They're still held by their oath. So if you give that some thought, you can really start to understand why, when I've explained to you what I've come to understand this year especially, which I'd have to say has perfected any and all my research into the law and adventures in it in the years past. The court of record is an exceptionally important first part of how you react to any summons that comes via a court letter, anything claiming to be a court, okay? You want the caseman file. You want a copy of that so you know what's going on. You're not going to get it because these are not. And this is where you can start to see then, pull it apart, that straight away, they're not giving you the caseman file. There is no file before a court. It's these Johnny-come-latelys, these star chambers, so that's the police, and these feigning to be judges. So you get arrested now, you're being passed by the police to a court room that they've hired, which then pretends to be a court. And all this is being done on contract by deception. So it's very, very, very important that once you're summoned to any court or whatever, the first thing you want is a copy of the caseman file. They're not going to give it you, so send straight away, you know it's a star chamber. So then you have to go through the process of invoking your rights, which is any court that has authority to fine or imprison has to be the king's court, and therefore that is determined by the fact that it is a court of record, case law, English common law. So you have to ensure that you are moving these summonses into the correct order if they're attacking you. Now, getting into the next one of that, as well as I've said before, is you want to make a notice that you're making a special appearance. And of course, this is where you then have to grasp your difference between person, man, okay? Because you want to demarcate that, you are man and you have special interest in the trust, a settler beneficiary, if you like, yeah, and that you will be coming to court in order to deal with this matter. So, caseman files request first, court of record, notice of special appearance, if you want to go down that line, which you can only really do if you're going to insist on the court of record, because you have to show them that you're not this surname title, you're not that trust, you're the original trust on your entry under your Christian name, and you are insisting you get justice. And for that to happen, you have to be in a king's court, which has to be a court of record. It's very simple. However, playing in that game as I did this year, they will do everything they can not to give you anything of that nature, because they want you in the Star Chamber under their jurisdiction by consent. Okay? So the minute you're arrested, you're consenting all the time because you're giving them the... So can you see how it's really important you move back to the beginning and understand that there's man, and there's person in the private, which is English common law, and then there's person in the public, which is the birth certificate title. Yeah? Those are the two things you really need to understand. And of course, if you're invoking man, you're invoking the biblical jurisdiction. Yeah? And so the only laws that you are operating under are those derived by the word of God, which are, throughout all the biblical tradition, only 10. And that is the 10 Commandments. Those are the only laws laid out through biblical tradition between God and man. Everything else is Mosaic law. And of course, Moses were always stumbling, the stumbling stone. He was always falling over the stumbling stone, which of course is when he was building up his garbage law. It always contradicted God's law, which had been set in stone, as we're told. And that was the stumbling stone that Moses was always falling over, because he was trying to make it up himself for his own power, you know. So although the story goes that he received the laws, the commandments, they were put in the box, and then he cocked everything up by, trying to build this body of law that were constantly in contradiction to the 10. So if you're following Mosaic law and not biblical law, this is why you're in such a mess. Whether you're a Catholic, whether you're a Protestant, or an evangelical, or whatever else you want to call it, if you're claiming to your biblical tradition, no, you're not. Okay? So that's the depth of it. And trying to simplify it, I just thought I'd make this little short, get it back on track, because some of the videos I've made lately have gone a little bit away from any form of law. So take a look at that. I'll put a link underneath for the first paragraph, because it is important, but it can sometimes just take away from the importance of why it is you want a court of record as a first thing. Case on file, court of record. And if you're going to go with the person thing to put you on the private person under common law, then you need to present a notice that you're making a special appearance. Okay, so with that, I will say till the next time.